it helped that child feel included and better. That, you know what, we're all different. We're all different. And that's okay. That's what makes us who we are.
Absolutely.
Gosh, I really don't know how to do this. I wonder if somebody could come up and show me. So pretending I didn't know, but really I didn't. And I'd have the kids come up and they would be the teacher. And this translates into homeschool as well. And I know we're going to get into that. But again, I want to just go back to Island of the Blue Dolphin, because as I'm sharing with my parents this year, I've got some fourth graders and we're going to be doing a couple of novel studies, and we're able to integrate 3 different subjects into one.
Moving on to something different is not for everyone, but if you are a teacher who is feeling a pull to get out and do something different, but you don't want to leave education because of the heartwarming stories that you're hearing today, you have that option, right? You have the ability. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Traveling Teacher Podcast. Teachers who left the classroom, but not education as a whole. I am your host, Peter Panopoulos, and today we have another special guest. Linda Spahr is a former public school teacher who has an extensive background in education. Being a corporate trainer before entering the world of education helped Linda bring a different perspective into her administrative roles and ultimately into her teaching. Linda now works with a public homeschool charter school in California, where she is able to be a part of the community and help parents navigate their options in a much clearer way. Linda, thank you so much for being a guest on the Traveling Teacher Podcast.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, the first conversation that we had preliminarily about you coming on as a guest, I was fascinated. I always enjoy learning new things that are going on. And public homeschooling charter schools is something that I had never heard about before. So I definitely look forward to hearing about all of that. But let's start from the top. I mean, where did this all start for you? When did you know you wanted to become a teacher?
Interesting enough, my brother told me when I was a little girl that I was a natural born teacher, because I used to line up all my stuffed animals on my bed and I would be teaching them math. And I was horrible in math at school. So it's funny that I was teaching all the stuffies my math. When I was in second grade, I had a wonderful teacher, Randy Snyder, which I'm going to send him a link to this podcast because I constantly shout out to him. He was always my inspiration to be a teacher. When I was in second grade, I was, like I said, horrible at math. And I just remember him taking the time to kneel by my desk and teach me a particular math lesson. That always meant something to me. I never thought about going into the teaching profession. I just kind of morphed into more administrative roles. I did, secretarial work and clerical. I worked in a very large HMO, worked my way up into lower level management and customer service management and training. And it was there I thought, man, I like teaching. This is really fun. And I did a lot of corporate training for their customer service and excellence. And then I was given a really interesting program called Youth. It was Youth Authority, or not the bad one, not in California, but we actually were teaching students how to write resumes and how to do interview skills. And we put them in the different departments in the hospital. And then every week, I actually ran those students through customer service training, the very training we were doing at the hospital. And it was fascinating. When I left that job, I went into a private school administrative position doing human resources. However, I loved teaching kids. So I did ASB and yearbook. And it was so fun. Little fast forward, we ended up moving to Murrieta, California, which we like to call Murray-Sweta, especially right now, and which is in between San Diego and Ontario, for those of you that don't know. And I just wanted a regular job, back to just doing office work. I just want to go to work and come home and be with my kids. But that call, as soon as my kids grew out of high school, that call to teaching just kept at me. And so I went back to school. I finished my degree and got back into the classroom in 2014, but this time in the classroom. So in front of kids. And by this time I thought, you know what? I've had enough teenagers. I'm going for the littles. And anyone that knows me knows it's like, wow, you're with little kids. As much as I love them, I was with the teens more. But the songs and the chants and the lessons and the light bulbs of those kids that I saw every day, I thought, this is it for me. So I was grateful that I was able to do long-term subbing for quite some time to hone in, where do I really want to be? And between second and fourth grade, that was my wheelhouse. And I enjoyed a good 6 more years in the classroom full time, doing between second and fourth grade. I was fortunate being at our local public school. I did lots of long-term subbing, and then I was at a charter school, especially during COVID. It was very interesting to be teaching those second, third, and fourth graders and getting them through. And once I became disenchanted with the charter school system and seeing what's going on, especially in California for public school, I thought, it's time for me just to leave the classroom. I can't compete with some of the legalities that are coming down, some of the parents that are non-supportive and just demanding that I pass their kids despite the fact that they can't read. And I had the opportunity to come to this public charter school in Southern California, and I'm able to support families as a learning coach. And it has become the best job I have ever had. So I'm able to support them. You can see I have my little homeschool classroom, and I know we're going to get into that a little bit later of how I actually do it. But now I work full time as a homeschool teacher, but I'm a coach to students. And then I also teach a little on the side in my class here. And I also do a little bit of tutoring. So there's your
Unbelievable.
crash course.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, there's so many amazing things to unpack there. I mean, first of all, the second grade teacher that you had that really took the time to help you out and make sure that you were getting what you needed. I think that is one of the most inspiring things to hear. And I'm sure it's something that really kind of got you into it. And yeah, you worked with teens a lot, and maybe kind of that thing in the back of your mind of that being in the second grade, maybe you experimenting on your own with the different grade levels and whatnot helped you kind of get to that point as well. And so that's really amazing. And I really love speaking with people who were not teachers straight out of college, who have done other things, because I think that it adds this extra perspective and piece of life that you can bring into the classroom, especially for the older
Yes.
students. And so it's very cool to hear about that. And the training part of all these students that you were working with, bringing them into the corporate world and doing this customer support training and all of these things it's very heartwarming, because again, I think a lot of people see education for anybody in kindergarten through 12th grade as just public school, and this is all we're going to do, and this is how you're going to learn. And being able to share with them a different aspect of life in such an educational way is something that I'm sure was very, very exciting for you.
It was, and so many times, and any teacher will attest to this. You'll have kids rolling their eyes saying, why am I learning this? And I think, especially coming from a different world, I love what you said. I didn't come straight out of college, as a young, a young lady, just straight into the classroom. This is actually my third career. So I have so much background, and I can honestly say, well, this is why, I haven't always done this. And then I'm able to also, let them think, well, what are you going to use this type of math? My son right now is scouring YouTube to do learning videos of how to fix his RV that him and his wife are living in now. They've decided to, lose the, traditional staying in the home, and I'm going to be in the RV. But I got to tell you, if he didn't have the wherewithal of mathematics, if he didn't have the wherewithal of hydraulics and understanding how to read, or even understanding how to concentrate on a video, even, it's not just watching, crazy cat videos all the time. You have to have some sort of attention and have some sort of dynamic that you're able to use your skills. Okay, he's able to fix this thing and not spend tens of thousands of dollars. He's also a machinist, for a very prominent union. Without that type of background, he can't do that. My daughter used to say constantly, how come I have to learn this? She went straight into cosmetology right out of high school. Well, all of a sudden she decided, you know what, I think I'm going to be an ultrasound tech. Well, you've got to have a lot of physics for that. So it's a good thing she had that background. So when students say, why am I learning this? Bottom line is, you just never know. Why not learn everything so that the world can be right before you, instead of like, oh, I got to start from scratch and learn all over again?
I think that's such an incredible way to look at it, and a way to express it to children is, you never know what's going to come your way. So why not take all of this in as a sponge as much as possible, so that you
Yes.
can apply it to anything in the world, wherever life may take you. I really like the way you said that. And I'm sure the students did it well, because making this not just a simply, well, we have to, right? Because then they won't buy into it, and showing them specific examples as to things that they're going to actually use this material on in the future, and then just leaving it open to, you are free to do whatever you would like in your life. And these things that we're learning right now will come in handy at some point, and it's exciting to see where they unfold for them. So that's really incredible. Now, going from the corporate world into the administrative aspect of education, talk to us a little bit about that, because you started off as, wasn't an accountant, it was school administration at a private school, if I remember.
Actually, well, when I was at the hospital, my whole goal was to do human resources. I enjoyed human resources. I loved customer service, and I loved the training. So when I left the hospital and I went to the private school and I was in administration, I was doing HR. I was also doing training. I loved writing procedure manuals, and I was doing the training there in the multiple departments. It was a large private school, so we were managing that. When I came to Marietta, like I said, I thought, I'm just, forget it. I don't want to do this anymore. But I started going, I think I was doing attendance, which is, anybody who's done it, is one of the most mundane jobs ever in, in a public school. It's awful. But it got me in the door, because anybody that wants to go into a public school, you do anything. Just, I'll be a crossing guard. I'll do anything to get in. I got that attendance job. And at one day, someone came up and said, "Hey, I saw your resume and I saw you've got a background in accounting," because I had done that accounting with through the training over at the hospital. And I said, "Well, yeah, I got a little bit." And they had me doing the accounting at the school, which gave me a whole different world of understanding school budget. And because I'm kind of a, well, guy, how do you say it nicely? I'm very thrifty. I don't want to say cheap, but I play the shell game well. Let's just say that. And in a public school, you have to know how to play a shell game well, so that you are not buying that, $100 hammer that we all heard about many years ago. And I really was able to hone in and enjoy that type of background there at the school. And again, because it was kind of easy for me, I was able to go to school and finish my degree. It was an easy transition for me to go from administration to teaching. The background that I have in administration and accounting actually helps me in this job today, because the organization you must have to be a homeschool teacher, to be able to organize not only your time, but your caseload of teachers, the understanding of the standards of all the grades that we support, and then to be able to train those kids or those parents in the lessons that they're not understanding, give them the support materials. All of this background that I have has just been such a blessing to provide to my parents.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And again, that's the beauty of going from one thing to another. And what while you said going into public school districts and doing whatever it takes to get in there, right? Even doing any job in general, they see who you are, they see your resume, they know your background. And it's so cool to hear that they're like, hey, you have an accounting background. Would you like to go and do this part of the school district? And just the ability to see that aspect of budgeting, like you said, and being able to get what it sounds like is a very well-rounded understanding of the education system as a whole from all of these different aspects of doing HR, of doing attendance, of doing the accounting portion, and all of the other things that you have done, including the teaching. And one thing I wanted to touch on before is the idea of doing long-term subbing to get in and
Hmm.
figure out what it is that is going to work best for you. Because I started off the same way. And for any teachers who are listening or anybody who wants to become a teacher, this is something that I highly suggest for anyone.
Yes.
I started off knowing that I wanted to be a high school physics teacher. And I had this opportunity to long-term sub in a school district first at a 7th grade math class. And I absolutely fell in love with it. The energy was unbelievable. And I realized this is it. Physics is not for me. This is what
Yes.
I want to do. And so hearing yours, if you started off with teens and then you moved down into the 2nd and the 3rd grade and found that those were your parts of it is truly amazing. I think it's just something that is so important to really get a hold of what it is that I think your heart speaks to the most. And the only way you can do that is by actually experiencing these different age groups in
Absolutely.
groups. Yeah.
I don't think I love what you said. Any teacher that, or aspiring teacher that is starting to get into subbing, because I know with student teaching, and I think it's kind of sad, some of the states right now, you have to go through the whole credential program before you could start in the classroom rather than, hey, is there a way that I could try this out? Because teaching any grade is not for the faint of heart. And for someone to have to go through and get a degree and get a credential and then go, this is not for me. It's really a shame. I think that there should be a way that the states would allow, at least, I know we have to have some background, maybe a bachelor's degree or whatever it is, but without the credential just yet, be able to start subbing and see, get my feet wet. Is this really what I want to do? And like you said, once you got in there, it's like, wait a minute, I'm not into that. I want to do something else. My whole goal was to teach either middle school or high school. And most of my teachers and my teacher friends and even my high school friends, it's like, yeah, high school is for you. Because I don't hold back a lot. I'm kind of hard on the kids, and I like to have them toe the line. And it's like, hey, you know what? Pull your head out. Come on, let's do this. And, the sarcasm, you can't quite be a little sarcastic with the littles. And I'm a little sarcastic, and you could do kind of jokes with the older kids. But when I did the long term subbing and I did high school a few times, and I stress a few times, I thought, wait a minute, I don't want to do this. I'm dealing with teenagers at home. We still had two more at home. I thought, you know what? I deal with this attitude at home. I don't want to be doing this all day. And quite frankly, I don't get paid enough to do all this all day. And then the kids, unfortunately, they don't do their work. It's a lot of work to grade. It's a lot of work to chase them down to get their work done. Sadly, especially with the kids with the apathy they have today, is so difficult. So when I thought, okay, well, I don't want high school, so I'm going to go back to middle school. I'm going to try the middle school. And I thought this is where I really would love to be, and it's a pivotal time to jump them into high school. And once again, I thought, I don't want to deal with the attitudes. I don't want to deal with a lot of my entitled parents that I had that just would not push their kids. My husband and I, we used to, there used to be helicopter parents where they were all over their kids. And then we called them lawnmower parents. We just want to, just smooth the way, no bumps, just smooth the way. But now they're bulldozers. They just, wipe it, scorched earth. And it's like, there's no bumps, no nothing. Everything's fine. And there's no accountability because they want to make life easy. And straight up, life is not easy. It's not easy. And unfortunately, I was not able to convey that to my middle school kids. And so then when I was subbing into the elementary schools, I went to many different schools in my district. And it was wonderful because I was able to hone down, who am I? Who am I as a teacher? Who am I as a person? Who can I handle all day, every day? And it was elementary that really worked for me. And I absolutely love it. And I loved it. And I still do. I love the elementaries.
It definitely sounds like it. And that piece of accountability is something that I respect a lot hearing about because it's very true, right? People in general are no longer held accountable for their actions. They do not want to take
Yes.
accountability for their actions. And it's being brought down into the students. And there really needs to be a unified front from all adults around to show that accountability is a necessary thing for everyone. And when it is not, and when you are one of few people in a student's life who may be really pushing on this accountability piece, it can be very difficult for it to get through because it's not being shown in other aspects of their life. And so I agree, and I also agree with the bulldozing. It's something that unfortunately the students' lives are so hyper structured at this point. Every year, things get more and more structured to the point where students are doing things until 9, 10 o'clock at night and then doing their homework, going to bed and waking up again. And it's something that I think can be a little too much for kids. And yeah, like you said, life is tough. And life being tough actually shows you a path along the lines
Yes.
of where it is that you feel as though you're going to go and the things that you learn along the way. I like to say it all the time that adversity is our biggest teacher, right? The
Yes.
things that get put in front of us for us to learn and struggle through are ultimately the things that create us as human beings. And it gives us the grit to be able to handle whatever comes our way. And when those
Yes.
things are not allowed to be put in front of us, it can be very difficult for students to understand the value in it. And yeah, I agree with everything you said. It's a very interesting time right now in life in general, right? And I feel as though life can be a little bit too easy for people because of the actions of others, and we
Yes.
really need to take a step back and say, well, we need to embrace these emotions, embrace all the positives and the negatives of life so we can become well-rounded people. And so, like I said, I
Exactly.
respect a lot of what you said about the accountability piece, and it's something that is so extremely important. And yes, again, the education system as a whole, I say this all the time, is being shaken up in a very big way right now. And I think one of the silver linings of what has happened over the last few years is that parents are starting to see more and more options that may have seemed taboo in the past, and really are coming to the mainstream light as something that is possible for them. And for me, I don't feel as though public education should go away by any means. I think there's definitely things that need to be changed. But I also feel the importance of parents understanding that there are different options, like what it is that you're doing right now with the homeschooling, or all of these other variety of things that have come to light, is that you have options as a parent, and public schooling is not the only one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to mention there just recently, there was a football player, and his name escapes my mind right now. But just recently, he did a some sort of a message at an awards or something, and he talked about playing football. That everyone should play football because football's hard. Football is adversity, and for him, of course, everything you need to know is playing football. But he was saying it's hard. There's training. Anyone who's played football, you've got those 2-a-days, especially in the summer. It's hard, but it's such a great training for life. Now, we're not going to talk about the hitting of the heads of that. Please, no comments. Don't send me any emails. We're just talking about the training. It's honestly, it's hard, but life is hard. And it is our job, not only as parents, but it's our job as educators to say, listen, you life is not going to be easy. One day you're going to have a job and the boss is going to tell you you need to be here at this time. and you do this job, and then your reward is you get this paycheck.
Yeah.
Or your job one day is going to be your baby cries, you get up, you feed it, you change it, and your reward is they say your name. So it's not always, well, what am I going to get? What am I going to get? Well, what you get is the pleasure of knowing that you did it, the pleasure of knowing that you accomplished whatever it is. And that's one of the goals I always tried to instill into my kids, where I'd say, okay, guys, we're going to do this. Well, what am I going to get? Well, you're going to get the honor and glory of finishing it.
Yeah.
That's what we need to be instilling.
Absolutely. And you mentioned as parents and as educators, we have this role, and as people in general, students included, we have in the society we live in today, we have this, I'll say, necessity to seek out the hard things that we need to pursue in order to go along the path that we want to, that may be unfolding for us in front of our eyes, right? And we have to persevere. And that perseverance, I like what you mentioned about the football player. He has the lens through football because it's hard and it's something that is structured and something that you can do. And there are millions of those types of things in life that are very similar to that. And it's so important to have some sort of structure that will allow you to endure the hard parts of something so that you can actually learn and move forward with them. So I really like everything that you mentioned. Now, how many different school districts were you involved in total?
Only two. Only two plus the private school. So technically three, I guess, because private school it was a religious school, so not really a district. It's a district unto itself. But then I was involved in a very large public school system. Again, I did classified work, meaning I did non-certificated work. I was not a teacher, and I did all kinds of things through there. Honestly, I did start as I did a crossing guard and did a couple other little things, and then I did the accounting, attendance, and then accounting, and then teaching. And then I went to a public charter school, in-person charter school.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And charter schools in California, again, some people don't understand what charter schools are. If you don't mind, just a little thing.
Please do.
A charter school is actually chartered, or it's approved through a school district. So in this area, Lake Elsinore School District, they said, okay, this little school, they want to have let's like alternative school. They want to have their school within our boundary. So that means we are allowing students to leave our district and go to this charter school. Okay. And because, schools are all about money. If there's a bum in the seat, they're getting money. Okay. So if they're allowing a state-run school, which are charters, to be in their boundary, that means they're going to lose kids. So you have to be approved through that. Charter schools have their guidelines. They have to abide by the state. They also have to have a board, but they are state funded. So that's what a charter school is. So a lot of people, they think, how does a charter work? They have to have a framework of this is how we're going to run our school. And everything has to be exactly through their state. And for us, it's the state of California.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, no,
a lot of people don't understand what is a charter school. And I wanted to make that clear.
I really appreciate the clarification because, again, this podcast is not only for teachers who are maybe thinking that there's something outside of the classroom for them, it's also for parents listening, and it's also for students. And this ability to clarify things from everybody's individual experiences just offers a network of knowledge for people to listen into. So I really appreciate the clarification on the charter schools. And yeah, it's such an interesting piece that gives people another option within a district, within an area, and they can do it alternatively, as you said. And there can be differences to it from the public school And yeah, I mean, so what was there any? I mean, let's talk more so about the elementary teaching portion that you had done. Is what did your classroom look like? Was it physically? What did the classroom look like during that time?
Well, fun, just fun. Now, I am not a Pinterest teacher, so my classroom was very eclectic. I have my little stuff here. We had, if we were going to do maybe something fun, if they had earned something, we would do indoor camping. So I had my individual fires, and the kids could sit around the fire, and we could have clipboards and sit on the floor and do our math and do our writing about our camping. Or, maybe we would have a sports theme sometime, and I would have my pom-poms ready. I was constantly wearing different t-shirts. I had a teacher shirt for almost practically every day. It was like a uniform. You could see I've got You Matter, lots of positive um, things on the walls, a lot of student artwork, a lot of student writing so that they could see their progress. Lots of positive affirmation, of course. I know that social emotional learning is very, very important right now, but not just to have posted on the walls, but just peppered into our speech. My classroom, although it looked like a lot of fun, and we had things hanging from the ceiling all the time. Fire department, I'm sorry. district, I'm sorry. Well, we knew because, the fire department usually tells you when they're coming, but I would constantly have to come in early. They go, Linda, the fire department's coming today, and I'd have to come in early and take it all down. And then I put it right back up, when we passed. But it was always so much fun.
Absolutely.
But back to SEL, one of the things I know that a lot of the classrooms right now, that they have their SEL time. Okay, now we're going to teach social emotional learning. It's just my opinion. Social emotional learning for us, it was a constant peppered through the day. We didn't have specific times that we learned it. Every day was a social emotional learning experience. So that's one of the things, new teachers, it's okay just to integrate it through everything rather than, okay, now we're going to do SEL. It's okay. But no offense if you do. It's just, that was just my style. Everyone has different styles.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think this is also something I mention all the time is that the social emotional aspect of teaching is truly probably 50% of the job. And being able
Yes.
to take real moments that are happening in the classroom and make them learning experiences for that social
Yes.
emotional piece is so unbelievable. And it's one of the things that really, I think, most teachers are passionate about. Taking that step back from the curriculum, saying, hold on, I just saw this. Let's talk about this for a second as something
Absolutely.
that is going to make you all understand what it means to be a better person and to understand yourselves and the people around you. So that peppering that into your lesson all day, every day is really just super important at all times.
And I like what you said too, that in the moment, it's not, okay, we're going to do a lesson, but I want to give an example. You said I can do a little storytelling, but I want to give an example because I had a little boy who was picking on another one, and they were walking in line, and this was kind of in the back of the line, and I didn't see it, I didn't hear it, but one of my little guys walked in and he was crying, and I said, "What's the matter?" And he goes, "Well, Johnny," he said, that I didn't have a dad. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And he didn't have a dad in the home. And he goes, "Well," he said, "that's because I'm Black." And I thought, whoa, this is a big teachable moment. So we every day when we had come in from our recess time or lunchtime, I always had a sit down time. And I actually just grabbed one of my books and we talked about the differences in families and how some people have a traditional family. Some people, they have maybe one parent in the home or no parents. Maybe they're being raised by a grandparent or foster parents, or maybe they have, two moms or two dads, or they have divorced. It was almost like the scene from at the end of Mrs. Doubtfire. It was a book. It was a book like that describing different families. But then this way, it was just a general, hey, let's take this moment and have that. And then later in the day, I was able to talk to that particular student that, said that to that other. And having those just at the time moments rather than just calling a kid out, okay, come on outside and let's talk about it. It just goes in one ear and out the other. I found, and unless of course it's violence, and that's a whole other thing. But having a whole moment to where now that student felt comfortable knowing that, yeah, it's okay to have a different family makeup. And we had a little discussion, of course, after the book. And sure enough, so we had kids, I had students that had same-sex families, and we had students that have divorced parents, and we have a lot of traditional families. And depending on the socioeconomic that you have in your classroom, we did have a homeless family. Now, of course, they're not saying that, but it helped that child feel included and better. That, what, we're all different. We're all different, and that's okay. That's what makes us who we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's such an important piece to do it as a class and not single anybody out in that moment, and then taking the time afterwards to speak to somebody privately, right? Because you're really killing two birds with one stone there. You are taking that time to teach everyone with a real life example that just had happened. And then you're able to really kind of hone in on that one person individually later on, and kind of have a more in-depth conversation or whatever is necessary for them to kind of just understand that, hey, everybody's lives are different. We never know, unless we are in somebody else's shoes, we never know what is going on. And it's those differences just create society, and everybody has different experiences in their lives. And it is such an important thing, especially to do in the second and third grade. Those elementary ages are just so crucial to these kinds of things. And that's very incredible. Thank you for sharing that story. What was your favorite part of teaching in the classroom?
Probably integrating the fun into teaching. Integrating the fun and making learning fun, making it relevant to them and enjoyable. I was not a real worksheet teacher. I loved to do a lot of hands-on. So if we were going to do, let's say, a math lesson, my math lessons were always, we would start with some sort of a math talk. And I would ask a real world question, like maybe they're at the grocery store, or maybe they're, getting, what were they getting at the time? I think Pokemon cards were coming up again, and they were doing their Pokemon cards because that's made a new rise again, or the Pokemon game, or, just something. We would talk about something mathematical with that. We would do the lesson, and then we would play a game. Usually I would play some sort of a game. Maybe we would do a four corners with the game, or maybe we would do, okay, we're going to go to the left side for this and the right side of the room for that. Something integrated. I loved my math centers. I had massive amount of centers so where the kids can not only learn the concept of the day, but they were also spiraling the concepts of the past. So I think honestly, that was my favorite part of just finding, not, okay, I'm going to stand up, I'm going to teach you, and you're going to learn it, and then we're going to do a worksheet, and then we're going to do a test. Another thing that I loved doing was student teacher. Student teacher was one of my favorites. Now, tip to the substitutes out there. You're going to go into a classroom and they're going to be teaching something, maybe, some of the new math, and they've been practicing it probably in the class. I remember going into a classroom and they were doing something with math, and I thought, I have no idea what they're doing. So my teacher go-to, if I didn't know it, I go, gosh, I really don't know how to do this. I wonder if somebody could come up and show me. So pretending I didn't know, but really I didn't. And I'd have the kids come up and they would be the teacher. Well, it really was quite a hit. And even in my own classroom, I would have student teacher that they would have to earn. So I had, because my last name is Spahr, so we had Spahr bucks, and I would pay my kids in Starbucks every week. They got paid for being at school. They got paid because, that's their job to come to school and be in school. So they got paid. They got paid for their classroom jobs. And they got to save their money. And we had a little bank of every 2 weeks, we did the Spahr store. And they would bring their money to the Spahr store and they would, buy candy. Yes, I bought candy and I gave it to California kids. Okay? It's okay. They live to tell about it. They could buy candy. They could buy, pencils or, this little tchotchke from, Dollar Tree or whatever. But they could also earn experiences like no shoes for the day or sit with a friend, or they would combine their money. And this was awesome. They would combine their money and buy a table. They would buy a table and they could be table with friends for a week. Or the big one was always student teacher. And that was the highest. They had to really earn that. And they got to be teacher for a day. Sometimes it was half a day. Sometimes it was for the whole day, depending on whatever. And I would sit with them. They had to sit with me the day before. We would lesson plan and get the lesson. And I would show them how to do the lesson. And I was always their backup. I was their assistant if they needed anything. But I also let them teach whatever lesson they wanted. So maybe they wanted to teach their own science lesson and they would do the science experiment, or they wanted to teach their own math lesson in their own math way. And it was awesome because I have students today, which are now in high school, saying, I still remember that and I want to be a teacher because of that. And it blessed me because it really was so impactful. They got to be on the, on the dot cam and writing on the whiteboard. And so it was such a great experience. So those are some of my favorites.
It's a tough question because there's lots of favorites, right?
There's so much. I could go on and on about that one.
Absolutely. And, it's so heartwarming hearing these kinds of stories and reminiscing about the classroom, because I'll be honest, there are things that I miss a lot from teaching in the classroom, and things that you're talking about really spark that up. And it's really cool to kind of relive it through these conversations and these stories. Like your story today. And it's really amazing. I mean, starting from the beginning of all of that, creating a real life situation that actually is something that they are enjoying in their life, Pokemon or something else, and really kind of honing in on that and creating a lesson surrounding that. I'm sure you saw so many excited looks whenever you would introduce it in such a way, because again, they're fully engaged in that moment. They're like, how on earth is Mrs. Spahr going to do this and show this to us, and with something that we actually enjoy outside of school, right? And that is the hallmark of an amazing teacher, is taking things like that and actually implementing them in the classroom. And that student teaching piece, I mean, how cool is that? Just allowing them,
it's the best.
Just allowing them to get up there and be the teacher and truly spark something that could have been deeply rooted inside of them that they may have never found if you had not done that with them. And so kudos to you for doing that. But and let me ask you this, because I'm not sure about California specifically, but I'm sure in general across the nation, the standards that we have from kindergarten through 12th grade, the timeline of things is becoming more and more crunched every single year.
Yes.
And how did you allow yourself the time to be able to do those things with the students when you have this pressure of these standards that we need to finish as quickly as possible within this given time frame? How did you allow yourself that freedom?
This may be very controversial to some, and if it is, it is. The bottom line is this: the kids are kids. Kids are kids. And I know that my particular state, the state of California, they want our children to be adults today. And they're only children for a small amount of time. In elementary school, they're not supposed to be college grads. They're supposed to be children. And so my goal was, I knew I had a curriculum to follow. And my goal was to make that as fun as possible, because if you make learning fun, if you make it relevant to a student, they're going to engage in it better and faster, and I would be able to move through it. I had a wonderful teacher partner, and I'm going to send this link to her, and I'm going to call her out, Maggie Cabral, probably one of the best teachers I have ever encountered, ever. And the most amazing partner. But I'm going to tell you, Maggie taught me how to integrate language arts, social studies, and even sometimes math. I mean, we would be able to integrate many subjects into one thematic unit. She taught me so much with that. We were able to hit several standards because of our thematic teaching. So, for example, maybe if we were going to be teaching stone soup. So not only are we teaching, our reading, but we would do some writing. We would also do a little bit of social studies with it. And then we would do some hands-on. We actually created stone soup. So there's a little bit of science right there. You've got 4 things going on at the same time. Because of that, jump up to 4th grade, when I'm doing Island of the Blue Dolphin, which is a novel about a Native American in California, not only am I teaching reading, but I'm teaching California history, and I'm able to do science with a particular slideshow that I bought from TPT, which is also an amazing resource. Don't hesitate to use that. There's amazing teachers out there that know how to do this, that know how to integrate all of this together. So I'm able to have some fun with the standards, to make it enjoyable, to make them live it, to get those kids literally to get in the boat of the island, of the canoe, to go around the island and enjoy the experience while we're learning. And I'm able to hit all those standards. Kids need to be kids. And if we're teaching them the foundations with fun, then they can be children. And I just want to say, who has this down too, I know so many people watching her right now, is Miss Rachel. Miss Rachel, she knows how to integrate all types of song and hand motions and sound and phonics and counting, all of this together. She's teaching a whole new generation of children in a variety of ways, but she's encompassing several standards in there. And people don't realize it. Good teachers know how to integrate multiple subjects into one lesson. It's called thematic teaching. And the more we can do that, the better.
I agree. And especially within the elementary ages, it's such a cool thing to hear that you can put all these things together and you can really make it a well-rounded lesson that includes as many subjects as possible. You can touch on many standards at once. And you're really, again, I think that is something that students must have been subconsciously most excited about, is that you made it sound not as though this is just a math lesson, let's buckle up and do this. This is something that is going to incorporate a lot of different pieces. And it's a very whole lesson that involves a lot of things. And it's not just one thing, especially nowadays with kids, having trouble with attention and all of that. When you're incorporating all these different pieces to it, it creates such a well-rounded something that students can look into, that they are able to see all these different pieces within that one lesson. And I think that is one of the coolest things I've heard and explained in such a way. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's just, again, it's just so nice hearing what you're talking about, right? It's so nice.
And this translates into homeschool as well. And I know we're going to get into that, but again, I want to just go back to Island of the Blue Dolphin, because as I'm sharing with my parents this year, I've got some 4th graders, and we're going to be doing a couple of novel studies, and we're able to integrate 3 different subjects into one lesson. And I'm able to check off those standards. How helpful is that to a parent now that's at home trying to piece together curriculum for their child? The relief on their faces is amazing. and of course the fun for the child, and then taking down the amount of time, because most of time in school is behavior, behavior, behavior. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. You can, and that's one of the cool things with the homeschooling. And again, we will get into that very shortly,
yeah.
but it's really amazing to understand as a parent or as a teacher, or even as a student, that you can compress a 7 hour day
Oh, yeah.
into 2 hours a day and you're learning everything that you need to learn. And
Yes.
I think for any teachers that are listening, I think what the amazing story that you just talked about of giving students the time to do the student teaching, to put all of these standards and different curriculums into one lesson. I think those are the things that most excite teachers in the beginning. And I feel as though a lot of teachers, their passion becomes throttled because they feel too stressed to actually be able to do something like that because of the standards that are set and the timeline that is set for them to accomplish. And again, I love what you said. Kids need to be kids. And it's so true. Kids need to be kids. Teachers do understand that. And the frustration that a lot of teachers may have in the classroom and within the system as a whole is that, well, unfortunately, I don't feel as though I have the time to do that. And I want to so badly. And you hear stories like yours and many others that we've had on as guests, that passion, that desire to want to do those things comes back in such an amazing way, if they decide that they want to move into something different. And moving on to something different is not for everyone. But if you are a teacher who is feeling a pull to get out and do something different, but you don't want to leave education because of the heartwarming stories that you're hearing today, you have that option, right? You have the ability to step out from there and try something different. Your resume does not end in the classroom, and your
Yeah.
passion is very much not only chained to the classroom. You can bring it into so many different options, right? And
Absolutely.
so yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing all of that. And speaking of potential frustrations or stresses that teachers may have, Linda, what was your least favorite part of teaching in the classroom?
Probably the administrative pressure. Probably that. Um, I in my last school, I felt like I had a lot of for a while I had a lot of freedom. Hence the camping days and a lot of the thematic teaching. But right now, but it got to be where, well, you're not teaching it fast enough. You're not teaching this fast enough. You need to be done by this time. And for example, they were demanding that I needed to have my kids dividing, and I was teaching fourth grade at the time. I needed to have them dividing and finishing up division by a certain time. And I said, well, unfortunately, these kids can't subtract. You can't teach division if they can't subtract. Um, and they couldn't subtract because, it was a couple years prior, they had missed out on some time during COVID. There was a massive gap there. And so we had to redo over and over subtraction and practice and continue what we were learning, but getting that for those foundational skills that were missing. And apparently I wasn't teaching things fast enough, and I was constantly getting in trouble for that. And I just said, I'm sorry, I'm going to slow down. I'm not going to be that teacher that says, okay, well, we got to move on. We got to move on. We got to move on. So what I did was I restructured my own math, and I said, because geometry is usually a unit that's taught at the very end of a school year, which, heads up teachers, it's interesting how it's taught at the end, but it's tested all throughout the year. It's kind of weird. So, here's a little teaching tip, guys. Geometry is taught at the end of the year. You can take that geometry unit and do a Geometry Friday. I learned that from another teacher, again, through my long-term subbing. Geometry Fridays, and you can get that whole unit done, and you're teaching geometry, and your kids are going to pass better in their state tests because they're learning geometry all throughout the year. That's a little teacher tip for you. Thank you, Miss Zimmer, for teaching me that.
Unbelievable.
But yeah, but It was that. The other thing, apparently I wasn't teaching a particular literature and writing skill fast enough. Well, I don't want it just half baked. I want it done right. I want my kids to write correctly. I didn't want them to do it just to get it done. And I'm also not the teacher that's I'm going to write it on the board and you're going to copy it in your own words. No, you're going to write it. We need to start having some more free thought. Now, especially with AI coming into play, this is going to be a struggle for us as teachers. But my frustration then was I wasn't teaching fast enough and I wasn't going to teach to tests. I was going to teach to standards and I was going to teach to the individual student. I didn't want students to feel that they were never going to catch up. So that was one of my main issues. The other was I mentioned parents that are going to make excuses for their students because they're not doing better. It's like, well, are you reading with him or her at home? Are you doing flashcards with him or her at home? I said, you can do these simple things. When you're in the car, use your human calculator. You can do multiplication, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Oh, gee, 5 fingers, 10 times 5 is 50. This is a human calculator. Do it in the car. Ask them questions in the car. When they're reading a book at home, did you read that book? Just ask a simple question. What did you read? What was that about? Or I would give them a reading log and not just I read 20 minutes. It would ask little questions, just general questions. What happened in the beginning? Or what was the cause and effect? It would ask simple questions that for any book. Parents, did you do this? No. Okay. So how can I help you to help, Johnny read better? Well, we're busy with soccer. We've got dance. We've got cheer. We've got this. Well, I can't give you a grade that Sarah's not earning, I just don't give grades out. She's got to earn it. I can help you earn that. And then sitting with the child, can you do this? Can you write this? Those were big frustrations for me. Not being able to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the cherry on top of all of you just said is that just not being able to get through to administration and to parents. And
Yes.
there's this frustration. It's a very common frustration that I hear is that, and it was mine as well, right? Is that teachers are kind of left holding everything together, especially after something like 2020, where
Yes.
there were enormous gaps that formed across all age groups during that time,
Yes.
and teachers are required to. It's administration may look at it as though we just need to move forward and this is how it needs to be. And I truly respect what you said, is that you were kind of in a way defending students by saying, like, I am not going to simply write them forward. I am actually going to slow down and do what needs to be done, what should be done for these students, and to be able to advocate for your students in such a way, regardless of how many times you were in trouble or how many times you were spoken to or all of those things, you decided, okay, sure, I will try to do something like the Geometry Fridays, which is a really, really cool idea, or integrating more things into one lesson. And yet you made sure that you were not just moving forward before the students actually had something that they were understanding. And that is something that is truly unbelievable, and I respect a lot, because at the end of the day, your job may potentially have been at stake because of those decisions, and yet you decided to hold strong with it. And that is something that is extremely noble of you, Linda. And really, I do mean that. That is very heartwarming and very, very cool to hear.
And I got to tell you, the parents that wanted that, really were grateful. And I hear from those parents even today. We are still connected today, and I'm very glad that I did it. To me, it's a matter of integrity. We jump into teaching because we love teaching and we love kids. And for me, if I'm going to love children, I want the best for them. And the best for them is I have to, we're all called to do individual plans. It's like, well, the individual plan for my class was to slow down. And I'm glad I did it. Never regretted it.
And I'm
Mhm.
sure, like you said, the parents are glad as well. And it's just so cool to hear the parents still reaching out to you
Yes.
and being supportive of the decision you had made, which is a very rare one, I would say. Not because teachers don't want to, but because there's fears outside of the classroom, and we all have lives that we need to support and all of that. So
Yes.
I truly, that what an amazing thing that you had done and continue to do. I mean, talk to us about the transition from the classroom into what it is that you're doing now. How was it leaving the classroom for you?
It was very difficult. It was extremely difficult. It was a very tough move. I always felt if I left the classroom, and especially I was one of I left mid-year. And to me, leaving mid-year was so difficult because I imagined myself as a student and coming in, and a parent had left because we are their everyday support system, and it just to me it was devastating. I knew it was going to devastate the kids, but I had had enough of my administration, so much so. I mean, it's got to be bad if you're going to leave your job. But my reasoning was my daughter was going to have our first grandbaby, and I needed to have the ability to care for her and for the baby and help them. And with the amount of drain that this administration was putting on me, it wasn't the kids, and it wasn't them, the parents. It was actually the admin. I just said, that's it, I'm done. And I left, and it was very difficult. And when I left with no job, which is rare for a teacher, because teachers, if you leave, you got to find a contract. Now, in some people, they're going to say, well, how did you leave? Because you didn't, how do you leave mid contract? I was in charter schools, usually charter schools, it's you're at will. It's non-union. So you put in your 2 weeks and you're gone. And they can do the same to you. They can say, you know what, you're out.
Wow.
So it was very difficult to leave and hurtful. I left most of my stuff there so that the kids could feel that they still had their home. It's just they're going to have someone new. I was very grateful that I had kind of made sorry, there's a fly here that hates me. um, I was grateful that my administration and we did come to an agreement that I had a peaceful transition to leave. Someone was able to come in. We just agreed that I was going to leave to take care of my daughter, and I appreciated that from them. At the winter break, I came and got the rest of my stuff, and they had transitioned with the new teacher, and it worked out very well. But then I thought, well, I maybe I'll just kind of work part time. Maybe I'll go back to subbing. We'll just see. And a friend of mine said, you should try this homeschooling position. I was like, I don't want to be a homeschool. I tried homeschooling my daughter. It was awful. And she goes, no, it's not what you think. It's not what you think. And I thought, well, all right, I'll just apply, whatever. And I had applied at my dream school, and I thought, oh, I'm up for this great position, over at my dream school. And then I've got this little homeschool in this side pocket. And I interviewed for both. And once I interviewed at the dream school, when I left, in my heart, I knew I need to do that homeschool job.
Hmm.
And the learning curve for this particular job was one of the steepest learning curves I've ever had, of learning how to manage a caseload, learning how to manage learning period meetings. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But all that goes into being a homeschool coach and a teacher, it was so steep. I thought, what have I done? But so many of the teachers, they said, if you just hang in there that second month, it's going to be great. And sure enough, boom, now I'm the one helping out the new teachers coming in and doing things like this, saying, this is the best job ever. It's awesome.
And it's such a difficult thing, myself included. All the teachers that I've spoken to, leaving the classroom is
Yes.
one of the most difficult things that you can do because, again, you are an adult figure, a significant adult figure in these students' lives.
Yes.
And you feel as though if I leave, I am doing a disservice to them. And for any
Mhm.
teachers that are listening, this is a very important message is that you and your family come first and you
Yes.
have to take care of yourself in order to be able to serve others around you. And
Yes.
talk about you mentioned the drain of all the aspects of being in a classroom. When you're a teacher, you are on for those 7 hours, you are on the entire time because you have little children around you that you are responsible for. And you have 30 of them or however many there may be, and you are in a constant state of worry or concern as to what is going on around you, or I should say alertness as to what is going on
Yes.
around you. And when they leave, you try to kind of relieve yourself of that alertness, and it drains you completely, right? Especially when you go
Yes.
for an entire school year. By the end of the school year, all teachers who are listening know this. By the end of the school year, you are just mentally gone, right? Like there's just so much there that makes you just very stressed out and very exhausted from what it is that you are doing. And again,
And people, they say, "Oh, but you get summers off and you get 2 weeks off." It's like, I don't think you even understand. It's not first of all, the joke of, people like running out of the classroom. I mean, teachers are running, but also, I'm sure, Peter, any good teacher, you're on for 7 hours. You're on stage. I always called it you're on stage, because the show matters. Book to read, guys. Little shout out to Andrew Nitsuris. The show matters. Get the book. It does matter what we put on to our students. It is a show, and you are on stage for that 7 hours. But when you're off stage, and you're like, oh gosh, I'm done. You're planning. You're always planning for the next day. You're always scouring the internet for, the next TPT. You're looking at someone on Instagram on their amazing classroom, how they created, a certain classroom environment or their lesson. You're constantly on, even in the summer. We're constantly at yard sales buying stuff for our classrooms, getting another storage unit for all of our stuff. So we're always on. People don't get that, yeah, we might be clocked or paid for certain amount of time, but we're always on. Teachers are always on. Guys, we rock. High five.
high five, absolutely high five, and it's so true. We are always on. We are always thinking of what is to come. How can we make this better? And how can we fall into this order and structure that we are placed in within the public schools? How can we put all of these things together? And it's an extremely
Yes.
difficult stress to hold on to. And, again, I never say that every teacher should leave the classroom. I mean, the attrition rate right now of teachers leaving is astronomical, and there's
Yes.
good reason for it. But if you are a teacher who does enjoy the structure and is okay with a lot of the things that are going on, we do need you in the classroom because, again,
Yes.
public education is not something that should just completely disappear. It is something that, sure, it is an imperfect system, as are all systems in society. But think about it this way. You just mentioned that you scour TPT, which is Teachers Pay Teachers, and to see the next thing. You're going to yard sales so that you can find new things for your classroom. And then I want people listening to think about you still doing those things when you are in education in whatever way you are, and yet you're doing it for yourself, right? There is a bit more freedom within other types of teaching and education that allow you to do the things you love, find the things you're looking for, and yet bring them in for your own self rather than a large system that truthfully doesn't necessarily appreciate all the extra things that you put into it, right? And so
Yes.
that is another plus of if you are feeling a pull to go doing something different. is that you get your autonomy back as a teacher and as a human being, and you are
Yes.
able to live a much more well-rounded life by doing so. And the transition can be extremely difficult. And like your mentors had told you, give it 2 months and you will fall into place, in a much better way. And again, as we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, life is tough. And yet,
Yes.
taking those tough times of transitioning from one thing to the next and really jumping in headfirst into your own classroom with your own structure, organization, all these different grade levels, all of these different pieces, and then
Yes.
coming out of the other side feeling accomplished and ready and more passionate than ever to be able to do the things you want to do. It's worth every struggle that you could possibly think of. I say it for myself. It sounds like it is for you as well. And talk to us about what you have going on now.
Well, now, as I shared, I'm a homeschool teacher, but not what you would think. I'm not teaching all kids all day, every day. Some homeschool teachers in California, that is what they do. They do the virtual platforms where the kids log in and they get their lessons online. I'm more of I'm a coach for parents. My caseload right now, I just checked my roster this morning. I'm at 30 kids right now. And it ranges from preschool, the TK, up to eighth grade. I have actually let go of my high school students. I had a couple of high school students last year, and I love them. But there are so many better high school teachers, homeschool coaches, and the counselors there that are so much better at knowing their standards and their needs than me. So I made that tough decision to let them go. But what I do is I help my parents structure their curriculum and their days. So when I get a new parent coming in, I ask them, what is it that you want to accomplish in your home? Some parents, they really want to teach their religious curriculum, which is fine. You can do that. State of California cannot pay for that, but our funding will pay for those music lessons or those horseback riding lessons or those art lessons that you are paying out of your pocket. So just flip flop it. You buy your curriculum, we'll pay for all the rest. Or maybe a parent says, I don't want to teach any of this stuff. I don't know how to do it. Our particular school does offer some online teaching, and I can help guide them to that, to where they can have pure virtual learning, or I can give them some online virtual learning platforms. Some of them, they want kind of a hybrid. I want to teach this because I'm really good at science and I want to teach the science and it's really fun. Or I want to teach the math because I don't like the new way of doing math. I want to teach my student the old way. So it's like, okay, great. Here's a Saxon math book and here's a great lesson. Nicole, the math lady, she's amazing, teaches old school math. And I can just help them find what fits their desires for their home, for their child. Now, I have a couple of families that have multiple siblings, and we do sometimes different things for the whole family. Also, some families, they want to teach because the kids are relatively close in age. They want to teach them at the same time, the same level. That's a little more difficult because, standards are different per grade. And I do have to check off standards each learning period, which is about every 20 school days. I have to check off that they're progressing through their particular grade level standards. So how do I get around that? Well, maybe that is when I'm going to give them a worksheet, or maybe they're going to be on a online learning platform like iExcel or iReady, where they can go in and they can do a quick lesson and demonstrate that they have been exposed to that particular standard. So I just kind of help my parents, kind of like that shell game I used to play with accounting. Well, now I do it with standards. And I'm able to kind of find the different curriculums and methods and teaching for those families to help design a program for them. And excuse me, it is absolutely a pleasure to go through that. and to help give them that support and let them know that, yes, they can do this. Homeschooling of the past, it's like, how do I do this? You get a big fat book, you get all these books and books and books. It's like, how do I teach this stuff? It's not that way anymore. There is so much more out there. And it's just such a pleasure to go out and help find that for them and design it, help design it with them. And then teach them the structure that they need. I don't know if you guys can't quite see it right here, but this is my own structure. You can see I know you can see the different colors, but there we go. A little backwards there. There's the times. I have to have my own structure. These are the times. This is what I have. This is my own little bell schedule of the day. And over here, this is by the day. These are the things I have to do. And I encourage my parents, listen, when you're at home, you have to have a structure in order to get through what you need to get through. Some of my parents, it's like, well, we don't want to do a structure. We want to let life teach our children. We want to be some of those unschooled families. It is a little harder, but I'm able to help them kind of formulate that. Let's say we're going to go on vacation. I had some parent, and they went on vacation last year, and they went to the Alamo, a couple different museums, Grand Canyon and things like that. So what I did was I helped give them a structure of, well, maybe you guys can do some sort of science while you're there. Definitely doing some social studies. You can write about it. You can take pictures of it and demonstrate the learning that they have while they're on vacation. Some of them, the families, they went to Hawaii. They went to the museums. They were doing shells for the little kids. They were counting shells and they lined them all up on the beach. And they did a little math lesson with the shells. Why not?
Yeah.
I tell them constantly, life will teach you. Oh, so we're having dinner tonight. Oh, how many slices of bananas do you want? Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, great. Well, if you ate 2, how many are left? Life is a lesson. Because of this, let me tell you something. My 18-month-old grandson counts to 10.
Wow.
It's awesome. So not only am I teaching them, but I'm even learning myself that, wow, we can kind of unschool, just letting life teach our kids. But then having, because, homeschooling, you have to demonstrate the learning. If you're in a public homeschool system, because you get funds, state funds, and if you want, we can talk about that later. You get state funds for that. Well, if you're going to get state funds, you got to demonstrate your learning. And that's how we do it. Pictures, writing, worksheets, online platforms. I help you find that.
It's amazing. And, we started off probably midway through the podcast talking about how it can be very difficult for a teacher to hold a student accountable when there are other pieces of their lives that are not doing so as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, but it sounds to me as though what you're doing right now is actually a piece that was missing from your own classroom that you really wanted to have, is teaching parents how to structure their lives in a way that allows their students to learn in whatever way possible. And when you were in the classroom and had parents that were basically just asking you to move their student forward and push them on and all of that, again, that's an accountability piece. But it feels as though you've really fulfilled that within this role that you have now.
Absolutely. Especially, we have students, we have actors, in a lot of the homeschools, we have actors, we have athletes, we have students with special needs. We still have all of that. But what's neat is, I have some that do a lot of taekwondo, a lot of that, and they have a lot of lessons. They really are training. So what we're able to do is, it's instead of at a traditional brick and mortar, that's what we call brick and mortar school, you're in class for 7 hours a day, but then you got your training. And then if you do homework, I know that there's a big controversy about homework, which, by the way, I do believe in a little, not 7 hours of homework, but I do believe in a little bit of homework, but it's too much for a student. But when you're homeschooling and you get up in the morning and, you do a little bit of reading, great. Take a break, go outside and play, come back in, do some math, however you do your math. Okay, take a break. Come back, do some writing or do your social studies. I usually tell my parents, listen, your main things every day, math, reading, writing, grammar, those types of things, those are your foundations. Social studies and science, get those done on Friday if you want, or make Thursday your social studies day, make Friday your science day. Or if some of my parents that have really embraced the thematic teaching, heck, I let them do science as their curriculum. I love some of the science programs, such as Generation Genius or Mystery Science. Not only are they doing hands-on science, but there's a writing piece that they can do. There's a reading piece that they can do. You can do compare and contrast of articles all the way down to kindergarten. You're asking the students some questions, and maybe they write one word as an answer. Oh, well, there you go. Not only are they reading a little bit, but they're writing and they're doing science. Check, check, and check. 3 subjects. And you just got that done in an hour. You do that every single day. I mean, it's amazing what we can do. And now that I've done this for a couple of years, I can't wait for this year because I've got some students that are going to be doing exactly that. They love science. Fine. Let's make science your main curriculum then. And it's just going to be so fun. I can't wait.
And your excitement is very clearly evident, and that is something that, again, is so important for teachers to see, because your passion, not that your passion was not there before, but I feel as though your passion is so openly free right now that you're so excited about being a teacher. You're excited about...
I feel like it's come back because that first year was like, oh my gosh, it's all paper. It's like, I can't get to what I want. But now it's like, oh, now that I've got this down and I understand, it's like, oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait.
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's so cool to see and feel and hear. And, are there students on your caseload right now? Because you mentioned you have about 30 students. Are there students on your caseload that have come from the public school, brick and mortar, that are coming to you, and have parents expressed the differences they've noticed in their kids, whether it's attention-wise, energy-wise, anything at all that your students' parents have observed about the students from making this transition to public school into this homeschooling that you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. I have one in particular that I can think of, and he was a first grader, and he's on an IEP, has some special needs. And one of the things that she found coming out of the traditional setting was because he was always taken out. He was constantly being taken out for his services. And although he was getting the dedicated services, it singled him out. And the kids made fun of him because he got singled out. Years ago, I remember when I was even in elementary school and some kids, they were pulled out. I was jealous. I was like, how come they get to go to ELD? Well, I had no idea they were actually learning English. But I wanted to be pulled out. I wanted to do something special. But it's not that way anymore. When you're pulled out, they know something. Kids know there's something up. Now that he's home and mom is able to meet those needs, and some of those services are being done online, maybe his speech, maybe some additional reading support by a different reading teacher, it has helped him to just calm down. And he feels more confident, and he's starting to engage more in his own learning rather than being constantly worried who's looking. I have another student who he is very driven. He's just driven, and he's going to be in 5th grade this year. And the traditional setting was just boring to him. It's like, why am I here? He's very smart. He can get his work done very fast, but he has to sit in the classroom all day because, that's just what you do. Well, now that he's home, he's able to structure his day the way he wants because he's very high functioning in that he knows what he wants. He knows how to do it. And he gets all of his work done very well, by the way, by 11 o'clock. And then he gets to do what he wants to do.
Wow.
And then jumping ahead, same thing with my high schooler. High school, she was just not into all of the socialization. She's very to herself, very, what's the word I want to say?
Introverted.
Introverted. Thank you. I
Yeah.
wanted to say integrated. It's like, that's not it.
It's okay.
Very introverted, which is fine. Some kids are like that. She just wants to get her work done and go do her thing. Well, it turns out this young lady, extremely intelligent. I said, listen, you are going to be on the fast track to graduating a year early. No doubt. Sure enough, this girl is pulling 102% in everything. She's now in Junior Honor Society, and she's going to be doing some volunteering. She's going to be doing amazing things. She's one of the ones I had to let go because I know there's going to be somebody better for that to help guide her into that fast track. But if she had been in just the basic mainstream brick and mortar, she'd just be stuck there every day. And, we all know an idle mind, idle hands, it brings trouble. So I see the difference in you got a first, a fourth, and a high schooler now. I've seen a huge difference in them. Being able to have their own structure, what works for them.
And those 3 students that you're talking about, there's countless more that are struggling within the brick and mortar public school system because, again, the public school system is designed for the masses. We have a large population within the public school system, and we have to treat it as a business. We have to treat it as something, unfortunately, outside of education a lot of the time. And, there is no one size fits all. And we try to create that as best as possible. And again, I'm not pointing towards the fault of that being administration or teachers or anybody in general, right? It's just the way the system is designed.
Yes.
And yet kids do fall through the cracks. And these types of success stories, I'll call them because they definitely are a reason for any parent listening who may feel as though their student is in the same boat to explore other options. Speak with someone like Linda, like myself, like anyone else who has experience both in and out of the classroom that allows them to understand what may be best for your student and for your family in general. So
Yes,
again,
absolutely.
Thank you. Hey, Linda, how has this transition helped your relationships in life and more importantly, the relationship with yourself?
Time. I know I was joking with you beforehand, but I'm dressed up on the top, but I've got the gym clothes on the bottom. I'm able to do some things now where I could get up in the morning. I can actually drink a hot cup of coffee at home while I'm answering my emails, while I'm preparing, because I do teach a class. It's an additional duty that I took on, that I do teach a online class in my school, but I could prepare for that class. It's only a half an hour. And then I can go do something real quick. I could have that doctor's appointment without taking a half day. I can finish my own day if I really put forth the effort and organize my time well, which is why I have that up there. If I organize my time well, I can go have that doctor's appointment, or I can go take a walk, or I could go to the gym. But most importantly, I get to take care of my grandson every single day. When my daughter goes to work, he's here in the afternoon. And I have the joy of seeing my family and making dinner instead of picking up food and being stressed all the time. For me, it's time. At this point in my life, the thing that matters the most is my family and showing love and being the person that I know God's called me to be and demonstrating that to everyone that I can. And I have the bandwidth to do that now, rather than struggling with, oh no, I gotta. I have that now. And that is the most important thing.
Getting your time back to be a human being again, while still being able to pursue your passions and succeed in doing so, which is very clear that you have done, is something that I think is a dream for so many teachers. And for anybody who's listening, as you've heard today, it is a dream that can truly become a reality. if you are
Yes.
willing to make that leap and transition into something different, and listen to this episode and many other episodes that are to come, and understand that your options outside of the classroom are seemingly limitless, and you can niche down into something that is going to work best for you, which ultimately works best for the students and families that you are serving. And again, like Linda said, you're getting your time back. You are less stressed to the point where you can serve your loved ones in a way that you may not have been able to do in the past when you were in different positions. All of this is just incredible. Is there is there any lasting message that you would like to leave our listeners with today?
I want to reiterate something that you actually just said a few minutes ago is we can't, as teachers, we can't serve our students and our parents, or even our administration. We can't serve others if we're running on empty. And it is vital that we take our time for ourselves to reboost ourselves. We have, as teachers, it's very hard to disengage from the classroom. So if you are still in the classroom, please take your days, take some mental health days. It's okay. It's all right. You need the time. So take it. Also, to love your family. Love your family, because they're the ones that are going to be there. Our kids, our students, although we love to hear back from them, they have their own lives, but your family is most important. And that is one of the biggest lessons I know I've learned, is my family is the most important. So much so that I even changed the tone of my voice in the classroom. I refuse to raise my voice in the classroom. A lot of us, we use our teacher voice. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. You will lower your voice, because I want to be able to talk to my family at the end of the day. And it works. So time, take it. Your family, they are there for you. And then don't be afraid to slow down and teach your kids. Don't be afraid to give them that side hug. It's okay. Don't be afraid. I know that touching students is very taboo. But kids need a touch sometimes, and appropriate, patting them on the back, or maybe just patting them on the head. The kids need it. Don't be afraid, and love on them and share your heart with them. I've cried in front of my students because I want them to know I'm human, and it's okay to be sad. And then we move on. So I guess those are some of those things. And then finally, if you are so frustrated in your classroom, if you are frustrated, it's time to move on. It's time. And however you do it, if you need to pray, if you need to talk to a counselor, but don't bring that frustration to the classroom, because it does translate. It does. And I know for me, it was translating into my classroom. Constantly, people were saying, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" And I knew it was time. So if it's your time, it's okay, because that just means another door is opening for you. And I am living proof. It wasn't just a door for me, it was a wall. And I walked through the wall, and I have never looked back. I've never looked back. So be encouraged. Be encouraged. Whatever career you choose, be encouraged. You're meant to be where you're supposed to be.
Such a beautiful lasting statement. It's I would love to chat upon all of that, but I think it's such an amazing way to kind of bring this podcast to an end. And thank you so much for everything that you've shared today, the lasting message at the end, the reminiscing of the classroom, your ability to transition into things and take that hardship of transitioning into something new and really make something of it. and all of your story as a whole is extremely inspiring, and it will definitely inspire many teachers and parents and students. So thank you so much for sharing, Linda. Where can people find you?
You can find me at, I'm sure if we have a link that we could pop in, I'll put it in there. But guys, you could find me on Facebook if you want. You could message me on Facebook. And then we'll drop in that link, and we'll also drop in my email link. It's Linda Luvin, Luvin, life at gmail.com. Or you could also contact me at Mrs. Spahr8 at gmail.com. I've got a couple of emails there, but if you want to chat any further on any of these things, any of it, I'm absolutely happy to chat with you about it. My whole goal is just to continue to encourage people to be who they are called to be.
And Linda, you are very clearly doing that. So thank you again. And thank you everybody for listening to another episode of the A Traveling Teacher podcast. And hope to see you all again soon. Linda, thank you again. This was amazing.
Thank you.